I'm Tiffany James of Nessie, and this is Pat Jones, the founder of the Bristol Dyslexia Center, Pat Jones OBE, and the Belgrave School for Dyslexia, and she is the mother of Mike Jones, who founded Nessie, and our host of the Dyslexia Awareness Northern Ireland. This is Jodie Snowden, a great specialist that operates out of Northern Ireland. Jodie and I have talked about this before. As teachers, when you're working with dyslexic kids, one of the things that is integral, one of the first things that you do is you try to build their confidence back up, because they're usually so crushed at school.
That's it.
And they can get really attached to their teacher.
Very much.
It can be a lifeline.
Jodie took Rowan on when he was in P2 and he was only 6. And at that point, it wasn't about the academics. It was about his self-esteem.
That's right.
Because he's a twin. And he said, of his own volition, I am really struggling with my reading. Finley finds it really easy. I find it really hard. I'm struggling. And I said, well, tell your teacher. And if your teacher knows you are struggling, that's a good thing. She will help you. She did not. So because he had said, I'm having a problem as a parent, we needed to show that we were taking that seriously and we would get him the help that he himself wanted. So he started with Jodie in P2 and he's still with her now, and he's just adores it. And because Jodie talked about dyslexia before he had his diagnosis in a very positive, sort of matter-of-fact way, when he got the diagnosis, that was fabulous. It was a positive thing for him, because I'm just like Jodie, and that's a very positive experience.
He is the sweetest boy. It just does not have to, it's more to do with Rowan. He's amazing.
He's been with Jodie for 4 years now, and I was saying, at some stage, you're maybe not going to need to go to Jodie. And he was just devastated, and he thought about it for a long time, and he decided he would stop going to Jodie when he had children of his own. It's going
to be a while. It's going to be a while.
His own children started going to Jodie.
That works for me.
Then he could stop going because he would still be seeing her. And that's the only time he's ever talked about having children, but that's he had to sort of work that out in his mind. And how would that be if I didn't go to, so that was his sort of reasoning. His kids would go there and then he would stop going, but he would still see her when he dropped them off.
Are both of your twins?
No, we have an elder son of 15 and we have twins who will be 10 next month, and Rowan has dyslexia. He also has ADHD and he also has Erlen's, and which is an eye condition. And he was happy enough about the first 2 diagnoses, but when the Erlen's came, he did hope, is it not Finley's turn? Because Finley doesn't have anything. But the ADHD and the dyslexia, he took those because he already knew about dyslexia before he got the diagnosis, and that was a godsend that Jodie had talked about it. And it was a relief for him because he always knew he was different. We have twins, we don't compare them, but Gillian has twins and Rosie has twins, and no matter how you parent, they make that comparison to themselves. And it's so destroying because Rowan will spend hours over his spellings and so desperately wants to get it right, and will spend hours and hours and hours. Finley is lazy and is naturally reads the list once and that's it. So Rowan puts in so much effort, and when you look at the 2 pieces of work, it's just not it's not evident. And when you have twins, the dynamic of twins is difficult.
However, I can tell you a story about that. It's a true story. That a parent brought some twins to me, and exactly the same situation. Only one of them was dyslexic, dyspraxic as well, and they came to the centre, our Bristol centre, for 8 years, just 1 hour a week. And when they took their GCSEs, the dyslexic one got amazing results. The other one, who hadn't worked as hard, flopped. It's amazing, isn't it? So actually that determination the child had to keep at it.
We got a statement of special educational needs for Rowan, and we only got it recently. And so he is now getting some support. And while I don't make a comparison, it's very difficult when you have 2 children and you see that very wide gap. However, with the support now, and it just goes to show with the right support,
Yes.
they have just recently done standardised tests and they are now exactly the same.
That's
So
brilliant.
That is
now,
wonderful.
that doesn't show how much more effort Rowan
Yeah,
is
no.
having
Yeah,
to
to get to that
compared to
end point.
Finlay. But
But
for him, it's important because I don't compare them, but he is constantly comparing
They do.
himself, to his twin. So to see that he has, been able to catch that up has been amazing. And I have to say, without the input of Jodie and Dyslexia Awareness NI, it's not an easy process. And I probably would not have had the strength to keep going
Yes.
if I hadn't have had that
Yeah, it's
encouragement.
important to
Because
have
that's really
a support
when
system.
when you go to a teacher and you say there's something wrong with my child, and they say no, there's no problem. Part of you wants to, part of you's relieved, and part of you
Yeah.
wants
Yeah.
to say, brilliant, I've done my job, I've asked,
Yes.
you've said there's no problem. But as a parent, and when you're going for the 5th, the 6th, the 7th, the 8th, the 20th time, and you're being, you're then starting to be met with hostility when you're having the same conversations over and over and over again. We were raising concerns from P1, and Rowan didn't get his statement of special educational needs until he was in P5.
Very
However,
common.
in P3, we had our formal diagnosis of ADHD and dyslexia, and even with those 2 formal diagnoses, it was another 2 full years before we got a statement and the support. So, it's hard to keep going, and it's true, it's that funny meme we've all seen on Facebook. If you have a child with special educational needs, you have to be prepared to be disliked. And that's a simple enough statement. But when you're when you're standing there, someone who is responsible for your child and looking after your child, and they are not doing what they should be. We had to move our children, but for the last year of their education at their formal school, I'm not embarrassed to say, I had to wear sunglasses every single day I took my children to school.
Yes.
The most precious thing I own.
Yes.
And to give your child
Yeah.
to someone who just
Who
didn't
doesn't
care.
understand.
I don't know whether they understood or not, but the diagnosis was there.
Yeah.
And I had to wear sunglasses even all through winter.
Yeah.
And come back to the car and thought, why I'm failing my children almost as much as the school to give them to
Can I interject? As I was a teacher. I am a teacher. I've stopped while I'm raising the children, but I didn't know my son was dyslexic. I had no idea that Ollie was dyslexic. I had no idea he was struggling. I was frustrated with him. I was angry with him. I thought he wasn't working hard. He would sound out the word cat, and say words like mouse, dog, whatever. He had no idea. I had no idea. I'd never taught a child to read before in my life, and I had been teaching for 11 years before we had got to this situation. So not all teachers know. They're not all, I feel like I need to advocate for some of the teachers here because we haven't been given the training to recognise, and I didn't recognise at all. And I know that most people around the table today did see. I didn't see that Ollie had an issue. And when his teacher came to me, I think we've all been talking about the same teacher here. And when she said to me that she believed that Ollie possibly had dyslexia, I was like, no, he does not. Just leave him alone. Let him develop at his own time. There's nothing wrong with my son. When I came home, I was like, okay, I need to maybe check this out. And it was an SE website. We went on and did the phonics test, and it was like, whoa, okay, there is a massive issue here that I have completely missed. So I think a lot of the teachers are frustrated because they don't know what to do to help. They really don't.
Some do and just do not have the time or the resources.
I think my impression is sometimes there's that confinement in that they know the resources aren't there, and I don't know whether it's a formal thing or not, or a feeling that you and I both know there's a problem here, but I can't officially say because I have nothing to offer.
Yes.
And if you're lucky and you're working with a teacher that can say actually yes, it's nearly like 2 conversations, and then that's yours. I can identify with the difficulty of constantly having the same conversation.
I've watched your story, Pat, and watched the movie, so I know what you have been through, and it's you know, you
It's
have
still
lots of
going on.
difficult conversations with your children, but one of the most difficult conversations I had with Rowan, who had been very accepting of having ADHD and having dyslexia, and when you're a twin, you don't want to be different.
Yes.
You know, you don't want to be, but
Yes.
it was very accepting of those. So we'd had lots of difficult conversations, but one of the most difficult conversations I had with my child was he was in a reading group of 6 children, and I was constantly being told, Rowan's working very comfortably in group 4 out of 5. Now, I knew with the level of intelligence,
Yes.
he should not be working comfortably in group 4 out of 5, but I was supposed to be pleased that he wasn't in the bottom group
Yes.
and just leave him there. He's working comfortably in group 4 out of 5. My child came home one day, and he's with the ADHD, he's quite direct. He's never malicious.
Yeah.
But he said to me, not with any unpleasantness, Mummy, I am the only child in the class that has a diagnosis of ADHD and dyslexia. There are 6 of us in our reading group,
Yes.
and the other 5 go out to do work with Mrs. So-and-so, who was the Senko. When is it going to be my turn, Mummy?
And
So he was in a reading group with 6 children.
Yes.
The other 5 had no diagnosis, and those 5 children were taken out to do work with the Senko, and he was left on his own because he was working comfortably in group 4 out of 5. When will
That's
it be
appalling.
my turn, Mummy?
Yes.
And the answer to that is, do you know what? In this school, it's never going to be your turn, pet. But that was a very difficult, you know.
But that's where you have to go in.
And that's where you
That's
go
where
in
you speak
when
up
you
for
know
your
better.
But
child.
you know, it's heartbreaking when your
I
child
know.
is so desperate
Yes.
to get the support and know that they need that
Yes.
support,
Right.
and to see that the support is there, but it's not being given to
Yes.
them.
Yes.
And
And
It's
that's
the
very
same-
hard.
Exactly the same situation now,
Yes.
40 years
Yeah.
yes, after your
Later.
story.
I think that was the
Absolutely.
saddest thing I
Yeah.
found about the movie.
Murphy, yes.
Yeah.
That
That was-
really, you know, we like to think that we have moved
Right.
on, and we have
Yeah.
moved on in that we do. You know, there are very few people now, whether they have a dyslexic child or not, there are very few people don't have a basic understanding
Right,
of
yes.
what is dyslexia,
Right.
what does it mean. Most people think it's fixed with coloured glasses.
Yeah.
But you know,
Reading
most
backwards
people have
and
some-
all those.
in some ways we have come on, but in terms of
In terms of
practical,
achievement.
Yeah, exactly.
Taking action. Yeah.
you know, it that I
Yes,
think was
it
the
is.
saddest bit,
Yes.
that it hasn't
It
changed.
is. It needs to start at college.
Yeah.
And
Teacher training.
when people are being trained to be teachers, there has to be some proper training on phonics and how to teach all children. It's just lucky if you've got a child who will automatically read, and I think that's luck.
Yeah, there's not that many.
But any child needs proper training, like the twins I was talking to you
Yes.
about. One of them had that training,
Yes.
and so although he was slower and he had to work hard, when he got to that stage of having to prove himself,
The resilience.
he did well,
Yes.
better than his brother.
Yeah.
But teachers aren't trained to know about phonics. Even people who've been trained in how to teach children with dyslexia. Some of them, when they come to me, we have to do a whole year's training again because although they have the basics, they know exactly what to do, there are different ways of presenting it.
Yeah.
There's this idea too that phonics is just learning the sounds and the
Yes.
letters. And like you said, he was sounding out act and never progressed. There's a next stage to that. So phonics
Yes.
is much more than just learning the letters
Yes.
and letter sounds. And you have to take them all the way through
Yes.
and develop their fluency, and then their comprehension comes with fluency. You're not going to have good comprehension if you have poor fluency, and you're going to have poor fluency if you don't have good phonological awareness and a knowledge of phonics. So you have to do all the steps.
Which is why, can I just say that? It's why I think in England, where they do have the phonics checks in place, which seems like, yay, great, that's what we want. They're not doing anything with it. So they're just checking for the phonics and not taking it to the next level and not applying it in their teaching and using the results to guide their instruction. And that's where it falls short. So it's not enough to just say, a phonics check.
A phonics check will do it, because we have something like 95% of children passing the phonics check now, but there's a difference between passing the phonics check and really understanding phonics.
Being able to
So
apply it.
if you're prepping them to pass the test, just like any test, you can cram and prep to pass it. That doesn't mean that you have the knowledge really ingrained. And so you've got lots of kids passing it, but then when you still get to the international test, they still fall down.
But also, dyslexics have memory problems.
They have memory problems as well, so it's more than just the phonics.
They might learn it all the night before.
That's true.
You know, really hard work.
That's what I found probably one of the most frustrating things with my daughter. She, works really hard, has always been in the bottom group all the way through school, has numeracy issues as well as literacy issues. But she would learn something, and then that afternoon, or definitely by the next morning,
It's gone.
gone. So it was getting ways of securing it in her long term memory, and she still would struggle with phonics, because my son, who's P1, is obviously going through that at the minute, and she's so good. She sits with him and reads with him, and you can see he's got it. He's blending. And I'm just like, wow,
Gillian, too, sometimes it's the frustration you see in your child when they know, I know this, but they just can't.
They just can't grab it. You can't grab it. They're going fishing, but nothing's catching.
I think
that frustration
a
is there.
step off from that is where I knew this, but I knew it yesterday, and I don't know it today.
Yes, I remember Mike saying to me when I was teaching him, and I was beginning to feel, as teachers shouldn't, rather frustrated.
Because Pat is a teacher, so she's teaching her son, and she's trained to teach.
And I remember sitting there, not saying anything to him, but feeling inside, dear, I'm not getting this across properly. And he said, Mum, I know you're frustrated, but you're not as frustrated as me.
Exactly.
That makes me feel quite bad, because now, and I've said this to Jodie, I'm from a therapy background, so I work at the health service. I have never shouted at a patient, never.
Yes.
And I've worked with adults, and it's language impairment and cognitive impairment and all of that. I have shouted at my...
Yes, I know, but it's too difficult.
It's too difficult.
It's human nature.
Yeah.
I hate to say this, but I shout at my husband all the time. He's very dyslexic because he forgets where things are.
I think I just look at Jonathan's bedroom and a school bag. At the end of the day, he just does this. Just school bag. And that's his mind.
Yes.
That's what it looks like on the outside. That's the manifestation of what's going on the inside.
Ollie's the same. His room is an absolute mess. But if I say to him, Ollie, where's such and such, it's lying over in that corner beside, and I wouldn't dare even touch. We've been really lucky with him. He has got a brilliant sense of humour about his dyslexia. And again, same as you, when I met Jodie at first and said to her, hey, the teacher thinks he's dyslexic, and was introduced to Jodie, and she was like, brilliant, isn't that amazing? I was like, is it? Well, okay. And then I met another guy who's a photographer here, and he had been diagnosed at 37, and he was the first person that Ollie spoke to about dyslexia, and he was like, hey, I hear you've got this is our superpower. So he's always seen it as something to be really proud of, which is really fortunate, because I was panicking like mad. But he has had a great sense of humour about his spelling. He knows his spelling is atrocious. He's learned to read. He knows that he'd read a story and it'll be gone by the end of the day. But he was writing about Knights of Camelot or something the other day, and the vowels just disappear in his spelling, and it was Knits of Camelot, and we've been able to have a giggle about it, and I know he is frustrated by it, but he sees that as a really small part of what he's got. He's got this visual spatial awareness that is just absolutely phenomenal. Just trying, and we always focus on that. He knows that reading and spelling is always going to be difficult, but that he has this thing that nobody else has, that is going to take him places when he's older. And I think it's really important that we do try and put a positive spin. I know that we're all very angry at how our children have been feeling. I know certainly Ollie's self-esteem was on the floor in school, and I couldn't understand this, because at home he's really confident and he's really competent and he's really secure, but it was the constant reading, writing, spelling, numeracy in school that was just completely crushing him. And certainly yesterday when we found out the schools, I'm so excited about him going to secondary school because he's going to have all of these other subjects.
And creative outlet.
Yeah.
I mean, Evie can't wait to do HE and art and technology and science and not just concentrate on numeracy and literacy all the time.
It is
So
absolutely. It is thinking outside the box, and Rowan does. And because we have twins, you see how differently he sees things. We had a simple maths homework to do during lockdown, and it was a square, colour in a quarter. Finley divided it into 4 and coloured in his quarter. Rowan coloured in the 4 corners. So it was a quarter, but that was the way he saw it.
That's how he saw it.
We submitted it, and the teacher sent it back and marked it wrong because he was the only one in the class that had done it that way. And I had to resubmit it and say, I did exactly the same thing. I looked at it quickly, and because it was different to Finley's, I thought it was wrong. But if you look at it again, it's actually not wrong. And I did a course with the Dyslexia Centre in Belfast, and they were saying, there are recruitment agencies now in London who are specifically targeting autistic and dyslexic children or adults because they see things, so who's to say just because they see things in a different way that's not less, and Rowan very much likes the fact that he sees things differently.
Have you seen the TED Talk given by Katie Griggs, who is the founder of Made by Dyslexia? She gave a TED Talk, and it was it started out with a sperm bank and going out into the street and saying, would you like to have a dyslexic child? And people were absolutely horrified at this, and then it goes on to her discussing why they started Made by Dyslexia, and it is the most positive, most powerful talk that I have ever watched. It was actually an Australian girl who I was connecting with on Instagram who recommended me to watch it. And I skipped the first bit with Ollie, but I showed him the talk, and she was saying that going forward into the next sort of technological revolution, they will need out-of-the-box thinkers. And again, that was where he's like, oh my goodness, well, this is the way that I think. I am dyslexic, so if I learn to read and I'm dyslexic, I have got the edge on everybody in my class.
I think, there's the current debate, whether people with dyslexia, whether they've proven they have a superpower naturally, like every child. But there is no denying that having a different neurology, which children with dyslexia do, and experiencing the world the way that they do because of people not understanding dyslexia, gives you a unique way of thinking. And if you have those skills, if you have a particular talent or creativity, that is going to be unique because of those two things. You're going to express it differently, and I think that we were just talking about this.
There's this. Some people are. Well, we get quite a bit of feedback from having these superpower messages. Because it makes some children feel quite bad, and their parents feel quite bad because they're struggling so much. And then people are saying, "Well, you're going to be Richard Branson," and he's thinking, "Well, I can't even, I can't even spell that." And they find it to be exactly the opposite. They find the messages to be disheartening and to hurt, to really cause a lot of pain. So it goes both ways.
I think it does help, though. It helps to know that you're not doomed because of the education system, that just because this is happening to you and this is out of your control, these people are not writing your future. You have a future, you have abilities that are outside of school. And I think that, so it is important to have those success stories. And I really like Tiffany has written in her book, just using real people, real kids who have been successful. Ollie could be in that book. And it's not always just the Richard Bransons and the celebrities who everybody loves. And of course, they are great because they get it out there. And I think it helps attract people who are not in the dyslexia world because they see the celebrities and, they can identify. But certainly just finding people in the community,
right?
Who have been successful, like the photographer.
And I know a friend of ours, her brother went to school in Belfast, and we know them, and he was really severely dyslexic, and he's been very successful. And I'm not talking about the Richard Bransons and all that.
About just every people. Exactly.
They're successfully measured by just
absolutely.
And they're wonderful people doing all kinds of jobs that are dyslexic and successful.
Yes. Children often see the effort they have to put in at school
as
a sort of prison.
They do.
And they can't get further than that. So as parents, we have to try to show them the end You know, when they reach 16, or if they want to
18 or
leave, or
whatever.
18 or whenever, then they can branch out. And they can do exactly what they want to do.
We're all a mixture of strengths, and
Yes, we are.
everyone is. Dyslexics, non-dyslexics, neurotypicals. We're all a mixture of strengths and weaknesses. These kinds of kids, our kids, don't often just don't do well in school. And school, I mean, it's an instructional problem at that point. It's not the child isn't broken. There's nothing wrong with the child.
No.
The instruction that they're being given in school is not.
Sometimes they can be broken by.
Well, they're
By-
emotionally broken.
emotionally.
Oh,
Right.
yes, emotionally broken
Yes.
for sure.
But if you stick at it and you, as parents, really support them at home and show them other ways of doing things,
Yeah, and
And-
help them
and
find other
other-
things they're great
yes.
at. Yeah.
and then they can gradually bolster themselves up and see that there's going to be an end. Often when parents bring children to me, I actually talk to the children and I say, it's only until you're 16. That's a very small part of life. And if you work hard, you will have that stimulus and your effort. That will help you when you're older, and you'll go on and succeed in your area.
Whatever it is.
It doesn't matter if it's not reading. You know, it can be anything.
I think probably the worry is that, you know, you sort of feel that everything is geared around academic qualifications.
Yes.
And even to get into vocational things, you think you need a basic qualification in maths and English. What happens to the children that maybe can't do that?
The world is set up on
Usually
qualifications,
they do. If they get the right sort
get
of
the
help, they do. Because we've had children who come to us, say, 13, 14. We have parents, or we have adults coming to us, because we teach adults as well. And I had someone who was working in television, and her reading and writing was awful. She was an amazing camera woman, and she came and had a few lessons. She didn't have to have many, but she was amazing. It made such a difference to her. And then she gave all that back to our children.
I just find the really frustrating thing is that, and we've just kind of moved into the secondary education stage, that the scaffolding that you can put in place to allow your child to achieve, when it comes to exams, I've just had experience of this recently. They're not allowed to use the scaffolding. So, for example, Jonathan, he has numeracy problems. He's loads of problems. I could write a book. He's everything. But he would have a grid that he can use, and he quite often, not all can't remember all the mathematical processes, but he knows, for example, if he has to reduce a fraction 4/16 in its lowest form, he needs to divide something by something. Now, by the time he actually works that out,
That's pretty good.
he's forgotten what he needs to do with the answer.
I know.
But if he has his grid there,
Yes.
I'm thinking, oh, well, I know it multiplies, I'll do.
Yes.
He might get it right. So in the official exam situation, he's penalised because of his short-term memory and his sequencing problems, and he can't remember his tables. So to me, that's like somebody saying, we know you need crutches to walk, and you're really, you can do sports day, but you're not allowed to use your crutches.
That's
You're
exactly
right.
the same.
You're right.
Analogy,
Yes, but that's where you have to come in. You know, don't get upset about it, which is the natural thing for a parent to do. Instead, go in and say to them, this is not good enough. You are not making the correct allowances for my son,
Which
who
I did.
needs his grid.
Yes, which I did do and was allowed this time, but you're not allowed to use it, the GCSE.
Yes,
so
you
this
are.
will be the only time you're allowed to use it.
Yes, you are.
Really?
Yes, if you
Things
have
like that.
if you have a child who has been, you reassess when a child is taking GCSE, and you're allowed all sorts of things. He could say it if and that's why I was saying earlier that if you train him to think just one word and get into a system of doing something, that will help him enormously. But you can get all sorts of support.
Yeah.
Some of our children at GCSE level, they'll talk and doesn't make any difference to their grades.
But do you have to be statemented to get that?
No.
Right. Because the difference
as
when
you've
I'm
got-
doing homework, as I was saying to you, when I'm doing homework, the difference of what my child can put on paper of what he's doing himself, you would have, it sounds I'm doing him a disservice here, but you would have 4 lines of Sanskrit.
Yes.
No idea, foreign language.
Yes.
You ask him to read it back to you. He said, I can't read that, Mummy. You know, my spelling.
Yes.
But if he's to dictate to me,
Yes.
I'd get a page and a
Yeah,
half.
well, you can do that.
And full marks.
Do you have statements over here or EHCPs?
Statements.
But it's very rare that
Statement.
children with dyslexia would get a statement here.
Statement.
It does happen. We talked about this yesterday. If you have a medical diagnosis, and Tracy can speak about this,
Yes.
she's become quite an expert, unfortunately. If you have a medical diagnosis like ADHD,
Yes.
you can get a statement.
Yes.
Tracy had to fight really hard to get the
Yes.
dyslexia put on there. They
Yeah.
didn't want to put the dyslexia on there.
Why?
So
Why?
it's just, they just,
Is it because they don't have the resources?
they don't have the support to back it up. And so
They
they
know
know they'll be
want
accountable.
dyslexia to come under the remit of special educational needs.
Yeah.
Yes, I
They
know.
want
Because
they
the
want it
schools-
to be a school.
a school.
Yes, I
contained.
know.
So
Yeah,
that was
I know,
why-
and it's the same in England.
Yeah.
And we're very used to getting what we call EHCPs.
Right.
They keep changing the rules, but because we have a specialist school, we've got 80% of our children, full-time children, all have EHCPs. And so it's that you will need to fight for it. Let me go for it.
And you can go to like the Children's Law Center and CENAC, and they will support you, in helping you get to that point if you are like that.
Statement,
To to ask for those sort of needs and for the accommodations and things. Yeah.
Well,
Yes.
Aoife, it took 2 years to get a statement for Aoife,
Yes.
and I took it to the tribunal. She was refused twice,
Yes.
and I fought really hard.
Well done.
And I went to Lady Herman, and she got her statement. And now at school, it means in school she's got a classroom assistant. She's got her own laptop as well, and she done her exams there, and she got scores up in the 90s.
Yes.
So, she's got the right support. And
Yes.
sometimes there's kids in class, it's not fair, you've got an assistant. But as we said, Aoife, you deserve it. You're entitled to have the support.
It's not
and
that
I
it's not
fought
fair,
hard
but
for her to get it.
The other children
yeah.
should be fighting
Yeah.
that. The other
Exactly.
children's parents.
Exactly.
But we shouldn't have to fight
But we're
for
their
it.
voice. Yeah.
And I think that's you will see cases here and here where people do get what they need,
Yes.
and that's great. But what they've had to go through to get to that point,
It's horrendous.
and the amount of children
Yeah.
who will never get
Who will
that,
never get
who
that.
will never get that, and that is the
Yes.
majority.
Yes.
The way the system's set up here, very few kids are able to get a diagnosis, be put in for assessment every year. 2-3 kids max. And so what ends up happening is they get the assessment, even if they get the dyslexia diagnosis, which of course they're only calling SPLD
Yes.
or dyslexic tendencies. God forbid we should use the word dyslexia. And so they'll get that, and actually in order to get LTS support, so that would be your literacy support from the EA. You have to be in the bottom 3%, a discrepancy between attainment and ability. So you're talking about
Ours used to be bottom 1%.
bottom 1%. Yeah, I think it might even be less than 3% now, but they're constantly changing the
But
goalpost.
if you look at the law,
Yeah.
the law states that if that child has a special need, they need support, even if it's a 10%.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
It's a little harder here in Northern Ireland, only because our education system, it's a devolved issue, and you girls would be able to speak more about this than me, but it's a devolved issue, so we don't follow the exact laws that that kind
I
of
see.
protect you guys. But there are ones in place. There was one case where a boy they actually did go to courts, and the courts ruled in his favor. But then the EA appealed, and on appeal, the judge said that he couldn't, he felt like it was going to put the schools in an unfair position to have to provide the support that they couldn't. The EA wouldn't be able to provide it. What they were really worried about was that it was going to open up a
Can of worms.
can of worms,
Yes.
and that every person after that would go.
Yes.
So we got that close. But it was done through the Children's Law Centre, who are fantastic, but unfortunately, so that we don't even have any kind of
So
laws in
again,
that
it comes
place.
back to
I was going to say
training.
training,
Training.
university
Yeah,
level.
just front end,
Not only teachers were trained, well, teachers become administrators. And administrators
Yes, they
run the education departments,
Yes, they
don't they?
do.
So it's teacher training. If there was an understanding, because people don't go into teaching, do they? To not give kids what they need.
I'm a
teachers
teacher.
go in.
I'm
Yes,
a
me too.
secondary teacher, and I know that from our experience with our daughter and what I have learnt and what we've been through, I'm a better teacher because of it. Because I look out for the
Yes,
ones in
that's
my
right, you
classroom,
do.
and I'm like, right, you up to the front, and I know
Yes.
how to help them. I'm
Yes.
an art teacher, so obviously it's creative, but,
Yes.
and often the dyslexia kids in the
Yeah,
classroom
yeah.
love it,
Kinds of
and
classes, yeah.
but if I'm teaching other subjects, and it's definitely through my own, personal wanting to further, my own ability as a teacher
Yes.
that I am,
Yes.
but because the training isn't there.
Yeah.
Yes, no, it isn't.
I've said time and time again, if I went back to teaching now, I would be a completely different teacher.
Yes.
The dyslexia would feature so much more in my
Absolutely.
teaching.
Yes.
And if
You
I was
understand
also-
the kids so much more, and you understand behaviours, you understand why, maybe
What's
they're
going on.
getting off in the classroom,
Yeah.
So no, it's been good for me in that sense
Yes.
as well.
I think-
We've always said to Evie that school is going to be hard for you.
Yes.
It's going to be hard. It's been hard since P1. It was picked up by her P1 teacher that
Yes.
something was going on because she was staring out the window and not engaging, and we've just said you come home and this is your safe place. You can always come home at the end of the day,
Yeah.
and it's not forever. And
Yes,
it's what you were
that's
saying
right.
earlier,
Yes.
and you will get through it. And it is going to be hard, but we will make sure that you get to where you need to be, and whatever it takes. And I think
it will make her a better person.
oh, she's very determined. Actually,
That's-
I've seen
yeah.
a fire in her
Yes.
belly. Recently,
Yes.
even
Having support and the determination, that it really gets you so far. It
Yeah.
really does.
Yes.
It absolutely
But there
does.
are some dyslexics who don't have that determination.
Which is
Yeah.
And
That's
that's
true.
hard.
Don't have the
It's hard,
determination,
yes.
Yeah.
They're so bound by it.
Yes.
Or maybe it's too big a task.
Or their situation has been that dire that they've just
Yes,
never had those
that's
positive
right.
experiences.
Yes.
You need something to hold on to. You need some
Yes.
glimmer,
They do.
some
I
hope.
think for Ollie, the diagnosis was the biggest thing.
Yes.
The biggest
Yeah.
game changer for him.
It
and
is.
I think about last year, I had a conversation with him one day, and I said to him, we never really talk about the dyslexia, in terms of how you felt when you got the diagnosis. And he said, Mum, getting that diagnosis was the best thing that happened to
That's
me,
right.
because
Like a relief.
he says, I realised I wasn't dumb like
Yes.
everybody
Yes.
thought I was dumb.
Yes.
He said it was just
Yes.
like
Yes.
said my brain works in a different way. He
Yeah.
said I didn't know why everybody was getting this and finding
Yes.
this so
I
easy
know.
except for me.
Yes.
And
I think there's that, kids like Ollie and Evie were removed from their class every week to do their spelling test. They were segregated a little bit in terms of
different.
yes, and that bothered me in a way. But in a way, they kind of they found each other, and
that's great.
they've been a great support to each other. But I would like to see more integration within the classroom instead of just you'll do your test outside because you've got different spellings to everybody else, and that has always bothered me. But and in terms of the AQE, which we've just been through the process, Evie started off doing the AQE, and she could have done the same question if there was a page of the same questions. But see this mixing and matching, maths and English, then maths and English, then read this, and
Yeah.
she just, the processing was too. So again, just, I think you've got to remove them from that pressure whenever, and find a different path, But you know, there is this wee dyslexic gang.
there is.
The cool gang.
I think as well, before I found out Ollie had dyslexia, I was always really pro education in Northern Ireland and really pro the AQE. I've been through it myself when it was the 11 plus, and it was like it made you or broke you, you know. I just got on with it, you know, and when Ollie started to go through it and I was going through the papers with him, and it was like, make sure, or you'll get marks for the spelling, or it has to be the correct spelling. And I can just remember feeling like this is a paper that is set up to make these children fail. You cannot win. I know his IQ is high.
Exactly. This will never. There's no chance of this.
He can't do this. You know, he can't pick out or show inference in a composition. And it was just really, really frustrating. And I think since I've seen that and know that there are so many different types of intelligence, I think in Northern Ireland it definitely needs to change. It needs to be more like the English system, where you go to your local comprehensive and it's a mixed ability, and you know, they work with you dependent on your ability, rather than this grammar and secondary education that they have in Northern Ireland.
It's very much all about grammar schools in Northern
Yeah,
Ireland.
especially where we are
God,
here.
totally.
So,
And I think a lot of it comes from the parents too, because a lot of them want to say my child goes to
So
wherever,
there's
you
always an element
know.
to that.
So
I think, you know, it's with good intention. Parents want their children to go where there's going to be the most opportunity, and everyone's trying, and we're competing for positions and places and jobs and all of those things here. And so I think you think that's what you have to do as well. I mean, you obviously just have your parents who are going to want to just say it, and then they know their children, you know, are just, they breeze through school, and that's just where they're going to be, so they can have that comfort level. But yeah, I think it's, you know, that's part of raising dyslexia awareness, is just having parents and teachers in schools to realize that there are more ways than, you know, a test to show your intelligence, and that these children need to be valued, because there are so many dyslexic children I know in Northern Ireland that have the potential to just add so much to the country, and they're just being overlooked, and instead being, you know, in some cases just broken by the system, and it's just a waste, you know, and it's certainly something that needs to be addressed, you know, big time.
I mean, that test, the AQA, it doesn't define the child or who they are. Do you know what I mean? If a child wants to work hard, they will, you know. Like Aoife's severely dyslexic, and she wants to be a fashion designer. She loves Vivienne Westwood. And I said, well, you are going to be the next Vivienne Westwood, Aoife, you know, and if you work hard, you follow your dreams and you'll do it. You know, she loves sewing, and you know, so she's dreams of going to London, and I believe she will.
I do too.
Yeah,
It was brilliant. It was brilliant.
You know,
Yes,
so you just have to be positive and
I couldn't
encourage
believe
their.
that she was that advanced.
Yes,
Gosh, I'd
loves
have
it.
huge difficulty making something like the dress you
I
showed.
know, it was brilliant, wasn't it?
It was amazing.
Yeah, I know. So you just focus on their strengths, don't
Yes,
you?
you do.
Yeah,
Find
you do.
it.
Yeah.
That's one of the things we just always say, is just find it. Not every kid's going to be musical, and
Yes,
you know, not every kid's going to be an artist, and you know, anything. It doesn't. And I think it's important to do things not just because you're going to be the best at it. You know, my son loves diving. You know, he's not going to the Olympics. He might not even make the diving team.
Yeah.
But he likes to dive in the water. He just likes jumping off the board and going in the water, and that's, you know, why we go there. You know what I mean? So it's not looking, you know, they don't have to be the next greatest, but you think you need everything to be happy, or your children need everything to be happy. They actually just need one thing they enjoy and love to do, and that takes them through everything. That's all you need to do in life. You don't need to be the next greatest anything. You just need to be content, and you need to have an outlet to express your creativity and your thoughts and your ideas, and that really does carry you through some very difficult things, you know.
It's too short,
so,
isn't it?
Yes,
so
be happy.
They need to be happy.
Absolutely.
They have to realise that being top of the class is not necessarily going to make you happy.
Exactly.
Not everybody's going to be at the top.
No.
Yeah.
And not everybody's going to be the best singer, the best
Just
musician. That's why we
Be a
have
pretty
to.
boring place if we're all the same.
Yes, it would be, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Everybody's great at everything. Well, thanks everybody for joining us today. We have to wrap it up.
Yeah.
It's lovely to talk to all the mothers.
Yeah.
It's really great to meet you all.
Oh, so lovely to meet you.
It takes me back to the centre, because I probably see as many mothers on consultations in one day.
In a day, yes.
Yes, and that they all say the same
Yeah, the
thing.
stories are the same.
same.
And they're the same the world over. Every
So it's
country.
desperate that
Yes.
we
Yeah.
try to get some message out that things have to change.
Have to
That's
change.
it.